You know, there's something remarkable about a car that shared its engine with a tractor and went on to power some of Britain's most celebrated sports cars. But here's what might surprise you even more. In 1948, when most British manufacturers were still dusting off their pre-war designs, Standard Motor Company bet the entire company on a single, radical new model inspired by a 1941 Plymouth parked near the American Embassy in London. Think about that timing. Britain had just lost 30% of its wealth fighting the war. Rationing was still in full force, and the government was desperate for foreign currency. Every new car rolling off British assembly lines was earmarked for export. British motorists could only watch these modern machines being shipped to Australia, South America, and beyond. Into this austere world arrived the Standard Vanguard, named after HMS Vanguard, the Royal Navy's last battleship. This wasn't just another family saloon. This was Britain's first serious attempt at building a world car, a complete break from the past that would either save Standard Motor Company or sink it entirely. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to share 13 facts about this beetle-backed beauty that will change how you see this often overlooked piece of automotive history. Fact 1. It replaced Standard's entire pre-war range with one bold gamble. In 1948, Standard Motor Company took every single one of their pre-war designs, the Flying 8, the Flying 10, the Flying 12, the Flying 14, and replaced them all with just one car, the Vanguard. Think about the courage that required. Sir John Black, Standard's chairman, made a calculated gamble. Instead of spreading limited resources across multiple models, he concentrated everything into a single modern design that could be built in volume and sold worldwide. The factory was tooled to produce 500 Vanguards per day, an ambitious target for the era. This wasn't just cost-cutting, it was strategic brilliance. By focusing on one model, Standard could achieve economies of scale that competitors producing 5 or 6 different models simply couldn't match. And Black knew the domestic market couldn't absorb high-volume production. Britain was broke, rationing was in force, and people had no money for new cars. So from the very beginning, the Vanguard was designed for the export market, particularly targeting Australia and other Commonwealth nations hungry for modern transportation. Fact 2. The styling came from sketching American cars in London. Standard's chief stylist, Walter Belgrove, didn't travel to Detroit to research American car design. He didn't need to. In the early 1940s, American diplomats and military personnel stationed in London drove their Plymouths and other American cars around the city, parking them near the U.S. Embassy in Grosvenor Square. Belgrove spent time in London with his sketchpad, carefully studying the 1941 and 1942 Plymouth models. He was particularly drawn to their flowing beetleback design, that distinctive fastback rear end that was all the rage in America. But being British, he didn't simply copy the American design. He scaled it down, refined it, and gave it a more conservative British character in the interior treatment and instrumentation. The result was unmistakable. When you looked at a Phase 1 Vanguard, you immediately saw American influence in those curves, in that swept-back profile, in the integrated fenders and smooth body sides. Fisher and Ludlow built the body shell, and it looked absolutely modern compared to the upright, separate fender designs that dominated British roads in the late 1940s. Fact 3. The engine-powered tractors, sports cars, and everything in between. That 2088cc wetliner engine, sitting under the Vanguard's bonnet, wasn't developed exclusively for the car. Standard was simultaneously developing it for Harry Ferguson's revolutionary TEA-20 tractor, which was being built in Standard's massive Banner Lane shadow factory in Coventry. The tractor got an 80mm bore version, displacing 1,849 cc, producing 25 horsepower. The Vanguard got an enlarged 85mm bore version, displacing 2,088 cc. The compression ratio was 6.7 to 1, reflecting the poor quality petrol available in Britain. power output was 68 brake horsepower at 4,000 RPM, fed by a single Solex downdraft carburetor. But here's what makes this engine truly legendary. It went on to power the Triumph TR2, TR3, and TR4 sports cars, the Morgan Plus 4, the Triumph Roadster, and numerous other applications. With twin SU carburetors and higher compression ratios, this fundamentally tractor-derived engine could produce 90 horsepower in the Vanguard Sportsman and over 100 horsepower in the TR sports cars. The wet liner design was particularly clever. The cylinder liners sat in the coolant, not pressed into the block, which meant they could be easily replaced during overhauls. Perfect for tractors working hard all day, and brilliant for cars in export markets where ease of maintenance was crucial. Fact 4. Britons couldn't buy one for the first 2 years. The Vanguard began rolling off the assembly lines in the middle of 1948, but if you were a British motorist hoping to buy one, you were out of luck. Every single Vanguard produced in 1948 and 1949 was allocated exclusively to export markets. This wasn't Standard being difficult, this was government policy. Britain's balance of payments deficit stood at £1,400 million. The country was desperate for dollars and foreign currency. The government made it clear to manufacturers, export or die. So advertisements for the Vanguard in British publications carried a stark warning. For export only during 1948. British motorists could only read about their country's modern new car while watching them being loaded onto ships. The original launch price of £671 meant nothing to homebuyers because they simply couldn't purchase the car at any price. It wasn't until 1950 that significant deliveries to the domestic market finally began. By that time, Standard had established strong dealer networks overseas, particularly in Australia, where the Vanguard found a ready market. But for 2 full years, the Vanguard was Britain's most successful export that British people couldn't actually buy. Fact 5. It was one of the first cars fitted with the revolutionary Laycock overdrive. In 1950, the Vanguard and its sister car, the Triumph Renown, became the first production vehicles in the world to be fitted with the Laycock de Normanville overdrive as a factory option. This was a genuine technological breakthrough. The Laycock overdrive resulted from a chance meeting in 1947 between Ken Walker, a production engineer at Laycock Engineering Limited, and Captain Edgar de Normanville, an American transmission designer. Their A-type overdrive unit was first fitted to the Standard Vanguard in October 1948. Here's what made it so clever. The overdrive operated on both second and third gears of the 3-speed transmission, effectively creating a 5-speed gearbox. When engaged, it reduced engine revolutions by approximately 22%, dramatically improving fuel consumption and engine longevity during long-distance cruising. For UK buyers, the overdrive cost slightly under £45, including purchase tax when it became available in June 1950. That was roughly 7% of the car's total price, but for drivers covering long distances, the fuel savings and reduced engine wear made it worthwhile. The same basic Laycock overdrive system would later be fitted to Jaguars, Aston Martins, Ferraris, Austin Healey's, and the entire range of Triumph TR sports cars. Over 40 years, Laycock manufactured more than 3.5 million overdrive units. Fact 6. The first public showing wasn't in Britain. You might expect Britain's bold new export champion to debut at the London Motor Show, but you'd be wrong. The Standard Vanguard made its first public appearance at the Brussels Salon d'Automobiles, held from February 14th to 25th, 1948. Belgium had a strong connection to Standard through Imperia of Nessenvaux, which assembled Standard and Triumph cars under license. By choosing Brussels for the world premiere, Standard was making a clear statement. This car was built for international markets, not just the domestic one. Contemporary reports described the scene. The Vanguard made its first public appearance at Brussels and was certainly a sight that gladdened the heart of British visitors. Mounted on a pedestal at the corner of the Standard Triumph Imperia stand, it stood out in its champagne finish and attracted admiring crowds. The car finally appeared at a British motor show in October 1948 at the London Motor Show, and it's believed that the specific car displayed there still survives today in superb original condition. Fact 7. Phase I production exceeded 184,000 units. When we talk about the Phase 1 Vanguard produced from 1948 to 1953, we're not discussing some rare curiosity. Standard built 184,799 Phase 1 Vanguards, making it one of the most successful British cars of the early 1950s. To put that in perspective, during the same period, Austin sold only about 50,000 examples of their A70 Hereford, the Vanguard's most direct competitor. The difference was that Austin was spreading production across an entire range of vehicles, while Standard concentrated all their resources on the Vanguard. These weren't just saloons. Standard offered the Vanguard in multiple body styles. There was the estate car introduced in 1950 with its distinctive vertically divided rear doors. There was the 1,200-weight delivery van. There was the pickup truck, which found particular favor with the Royal Air Force. For Belgium only, Imperia produced convertible versions. And in Australia, the local subsidiary introduced a coupe utility version in 1950 that became hugely popular with Australian farmers. Fact 8. The Beetleback was redesigned in 1952. Not everyone loved the original Beetleback styling. While it looked modern and American-inspired, the sloping rear end, limited trunk space, and the small rear window compromised visibility. So, in 1952, Standard introduced what became known as the Phase IA. The changes were immediately visible. The bonnet line was lowered, giving the car a sleeker profile. The rear window was significantly enlarged, improving rearward visibility. And most distinctively, the front grille was completely redesigned, replacing the original closely packed vertical slats with 3 bold horizontal chrome bars that gave the car a more substantial, upscale appearance. These weren't just cosmetic tweaks. The changes freshened the design and addressed real functional concerns, helping maintain the Vanguard's competitive position as newer models from other manufacturers appeared. Then, in March 1953, came the Phase 2, which represented an even more dramatic transformation. The distinctive Beetleback was gone entirely, replaced by a conventional 3-box notchback design with a proper trunk that offered 50% more luggage capacity. The rear window was enlarged yet again, and a new extended grille incorporated the parking lights. The price had risen to £836, 19 shillings and 2p. Number fact 9. It dominated the West German import market. In 1950, as West Germany was slowly recovering from the devastation of war, the Standard Vanguard recorded 405 sales, making it the 3rd most popular imported automobile in the entire country. What makes this impressive is that the competition consisted mainly of much smaller, cheaper cars from French and Italian manufacturers. The Vanguard was larger and more expensive than most imports, yet it found ready buyers among Germans who appreciated its robust construction and reliable mechanicals. But here's the real kicker. Vanguard sales in 1950 accounted for more than 70% of all British cars sold in West Germany that year. Why did Standard succeed where other British manufacturers struggled? Simple. They had established a proper dealer network and ensured the availability of replacement parts. Other British manufacturers had shipped cars to Germany without adequate support infrastructure. Standard learned from those mistakes. Fact 10. It spawned Britain's first production diesel car. In February 1954, Standard achieved another automotive first by offering a diesel engine as a factory-fitted option in the Phase 2 Vanguard. This made it Britain's first production diesel car. The diesel engine was, like the petrol unit, derived from Ferguson tractor technology. The standard 20C diesel, displacing 2,092 cc, had originally been developed for the TEF-20 tractor introduced in March 1951. The tractor version produced 25 horsepower, but the unrestricted road-going version in the Vanguard produced 60 horsepower at 3,800 RPM. Performance was frankly disappointing compared to the petrol version. The Motor magazine tested a diesel Vanguard with overdrive in 1954 and recorded a top speed of just 66.2 miles per hour, with acceleration from 0 to 50 miles per hour taking 31.6 seconds. The compensation was fuel economy of 37.5 miles per imperial gallon. The diesel Vanguard retained the tractor's Gas starting aid, decompressor, and overfueling systems, all of which had to be manually operated when starting the engine from cold. This made it something of a handful for drivers unfamiliar with diesel technology. Only 1,973 diesel Vanguards were ever built, making them extremely rare today. Fact 11. The column gear lever, switch sides, in 1949. When the Vanguard was first introduced, the column-mounted gear lever was positioned on the right side of the steering wheel, which was the traditional British location at the time. But in 1949, Standard moved the gear lever to the left side of the steering wheel. This might seem trivial, but it actually improved ergonomics considerably. Most drivers are right-handed, so having the gear lever on the left meant your stronger hand remained on the steering wheel while your left hand operated the gears. The 3-speed gearbox featured synchromesh on all forward ratios, which was fairly advanced for the era. And the column-mounted location maximized interior space by eliminating a floor-mounted lever. With bench seats front and rear, the Vanguard could genuinely seat 6 adults. Fact 12. Rear wheel spats appeared in September 1949. In the late 1940s, rear wheel spats, those covers that partially concealed the rear wheels, were considered the height of modernity. They gave cars a more streamlined aerodynamic appearance, even if the actual aerodynamic benefits were negligible. Standard fitted these rear-wheel aprons to the Vanguard starting in September 1949, several months into production. They weren't just decorative. The spats helped keep mud and spray off the car's flanks, which was genuinely useful on the poorly maintained roads of post-war Britain and in export markets where sealed roads were often the exception. You'll notice them in photographs of later Phase 1 cars, those distinctive partial covers over the rear wheels that gave the Vanguard an even more American appearance. By the time of the Phase 2 in 1953, automotive fashion had moved on, and the spats disappeared from the design. Fact 13. A 1949 road test recorded 22 seconds to 60. Let's talk about performance, because we need to understand what fast meant in 1949. The Motor magazine tested a Vanguard that year and recorded some figures that might surprise modern drivers. Top speed was 78.7 miles per hour. That's genuinely quick for 1949, when most British family cars struggled to exceed 70. The sprint from standstill to 60 miles per hour took 21.5 seconds, which sounds glacial now, but was perfectly respectable for a large family saloon of the era. And fuel consumption came in at 22.9 miles per imperial gallon, which meant you could cover more than 300 miles on a tank of petrol. The test car cost £671, including taxes. To put that in context, the average annual wage for a British worker in 1949 was around £350, so the Vanguard represented nearly 2 years' wages. Most people buying new Vanguards weren't average workers. They were company directors, successful professionals, and export customers with access to hard currency. With the optional overdrive that became available the following year, those performance figures improved slightly, but more importantly, the overdrive made long-distance cruising much more relaxed and economical. So there you have 13 facts about the Standard Vanguard Phase 1 and early Phase 2 that demonstrate just how remarkable this car really was. It wasn't the fastest car of its era, it wasn't the most luxurious, and it certainly wasn't the most beautiful. But it represented something genuinely important: Britain's first serious attempt at building a world car designed from the ground up for international markets. The Vanguard succeeded precisely because it was pragmatic rather than glamorous. It shared its engine with tractors, which meant proven reliability and easy maintenance. It borrowed styling cues from America, but scaled them to British sensibilities. It pioneered technologies like the Laycock overdrive that would become industry standards. And it sold in sufficient numbers to prove that Standard's one-model gamble had paid off. Today, Phase 1 Vanguards are relatively rare, especially in good original condition. Those beetleback cars with their distinctive rear wheel spats and vertical slat grilles represent a specific moment in British automotive history when the industry was transitioning from pre-war designs to modern, international products. If you owned a Vanguard back in the day, or if your father or grandfather ran one, I'd love to hear your memories in the comments. What was it like to drive? How reliable was it? Did you have the overdrive option? If you found these facts interesting, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel. We're going to be exploring more forgotten classics and the fascinating stories behind them. Thank you for watching, and remember, these ordinary family saloons from the 1940s and 50s carry extraordinary stories if you know where to look.